Evidence can be heard and the perpetrators punished. This, if there is any justice in this world, will happen. Tribunals or international courts must be created. They may not prevent the worst genocidal killers, but at least some mass murderers will be brought to justice. Why did they specifically use the phrase that was intended to be about getting Jews out of Israel? Ridiculous, dude. I don't know, man. I don't think that's how most people understand it. Yeah, dude. When people say from the river to the sea, Palestine should be free, including Jews who say that, okay, like Jews in America or anti-apartheid activists, anti-Zionist activists say that, no matter what their background is, they're talking about ethnic cleansing. That's what they're talking about, right? This is ridiculous for two different reasons. One, it's ridiculous because it's a way to absolve the sins of the Israeli state, the sins of genocide and ethnic cleansing and mass ethnic displacement. The second reason why it's ridiculous is because there is no mechanism to do such a thing, regardless of whether or not there are people who wanted to do it to begin with. So it's already called into question, but there's no structure. There's no structure of enforcement. Whereas the structure of Holocaust, or not Holocaust, but genocide enforcement does very much exist in the Israeli state. They're doing it right now. It's like looking at Black Lives Matter and thinking that it means the great replacement, guys. This and anger towards like any kind of sentiment that revolves around Palestinian emancipation, Palestinian liberation, and getting upset at that messaging and being afraid that it is like inherently anti-Semitic is no different than the way that white people get scared of the great replacement theory. The white genocide. It's not real. There is no white genocide. And yet there are still people who are genuinely afraid of white genocide. So what must we do? Should I take those people seriously? Should I act like white genocide is happening? Is genocide actually being done by people, you know, peacefully coexisting and engaging in the act of miscegenation, which was illegal, and now it's not? What do we do? Why must we capitulate to uneducated opinions in the matter as an ethnic cleansing campaign is going on? If you look at the optics of a situation as Gaza is being raised, okay, and going, I don't know, man, Palestine should be free, seems anti-Semitic. Why? Because, I don't know, that's what people say it is. Then you are not a serious person. Like, let me tell you what's bad optics, dude. Genocide. Let me tell you what's bad optics. Cops killing 1,000 fucking civilians a year. But you are nitpicking the fucking side that is being butchered, the side that is being slaughtered, and their supporters. How can you say you are serious about social justice when that is what you are doing? I personally understand that it is important in the Western world, if you are in the Western world and if you're advocating for a certain position, if you're advocating for Palestinian emancipation, you have to be very careful not to have your words be misconstrued. I personally despise when people go around and fucking rip the posters of the missing Israeli people. I think it's gross. I understand that. But I'm not going to sit here and spend a tremendous amount of time yelling at those fucking dumbasses because I know that this has nothing to do with the broader and more important conversation. What is going on as we look at 7,000 people that were ruthlessly slaughtered, 3,000 babies, 3,000 children were ruthlessly fucking slaughtered by Israeli bombs. Because at the end of the day, you know what you're saying in that moment? You're going, man, I really wanted to fucking say, let's do a ceasefire because there's an ongoing ethnic cleansing campaign happening in a concentration camp that Israel has operated since 2005. But honestly, then I saw a bunch of dumbasses in fucking college campuses say things that scared me. From varying degrees, are there anti-Semitic people that are taking advantage of these protests? Abso-fucking-lutely. Are there people who are doing ridiculous things, like ripping up posters with missing Israeli children and missing Israeli civilians on them? It's ridiculous to do such a thing. Of course, it's gross. It's gross. But you see that and you go, guess what, dude? I just can't say no to ethnic cleansing now. You're a fucking coward and a psychopath. You were just looking for any reason to just say, you know, I'm sorry, ethnic cleansing has to happen. You are no different than Joe Biden in that situation. I don't think ripping up fascist propaganda to make you think what Israel is doing is okay is bad personally. No, dude, it's fucking ridiculous. You live in America, okay? You live in motherfucking America. We are responsible for this ethnic cleansing campaign happening. We're having these conversations, and it doesn't matter, even if not a single fucking poster was ripped apart, that people would still make these same inferences, okay? Because people are desperate to try to justify the ongoing ethnic cleansing campaign. But the fact that, like, that's your act of resistance is ridiculous. Because guess what? Those are still babies, okay? Those are still Israeli civilians. Like, think about the grandmother, that the 85-year-old grandmother that Hamas, the Al-Qassam brigades, released into the Rafah border. Think about how kind of an individual she is. She has spent most of her fucking life in a settler colonial state. Understandable, okay, this part is true, but she spent most of her fucking life transporting Palestinians that need desperately to get cancer to get cancer treatment into Israel. There are decent humans. You're fucking ridiculous. It's fucking insane to just say, oh, sorry, every single Israeli is an enemy combatant. It's ridiculous. The reason why I don't talk about it is because it's incredibly silly to talk about it when there's much worse shit happening on the ground. And I do think that people talk about it specifically so that they don't talk about the other thing. They don't talk about what is going on in Gaza. But having said that, if you want to know, if you want to understand what my position is, if you want to understand what I think about things like that, I think it's gross. It's fucking gross. Not only is it gross, but you're also lending credence to the propaganda that you claim these posters are. And then you have dipshits like this. How does blowing up jihadists upset people? That will never be fucking addressed as a disgusting freak-like way to justify ethnic cleansing. Why? Because that attitude is one that the American State Department also shares. It's fucking ridiculous. I will not be capitulating to this fucking bad faith takes. Israeli poll finds 49% support holding off on Gaza ground invasion, ground offensive. Nearly half of all respondents believe the Israeli government should wait with its ground operation in Gaza, while just over a quarter believe the IDF should embark on the offensive immediately. Almost half of Israelis want to hold off on any invasion of Gaza, according to a poll published on Friday, in what may indicate a dip in support for the planned next stage of the counteroffensive against Hamas militants holding some 200 hostages. Israel vowed to annihilate Hamas in response to the Palestinian Islamist killing and kidnapping spree in the southern communities on October 7th, and has been stepping up tank and infantry raids in concert with heavy shelling on the enclave. Asked if the military should immediately escalate to a large-scale ground offensive, 29% of Israelis agreed, while 49% said it would be better to wait, and 22% were undecided, the poll published in the Ma'ariv newspaper yesterday. The Daily said the results contrasted with this October 19th poll that found 65% support for a major ground offensive. America is, once again, lapping Israel on its right-wing reactionary American government, not American people. Because we saw the Canadian poll as well, okay? This is not a popular idea for the populations. It's simply a universally adopted position by those in positions of power.
Being honest about the fact that there have been civilian casualties and that there likely will be more is being honest, because that's what war is. It's brutal, it's ugly, it's messy. I've said that before. The president also said that yesterday. Doesn't mean we have to like it.
It's hard to look at what he's doing in Ukraine, what his forces are doing in Ukraine, and think that any ethical, moral individual could justify that. It's difficult to look at the It's difficult to look at some of the images and imagine that any well-thinking, serious, mature leader would do that.
There you go. He sheds tears for dying Ukrainians in the hands of Russian forces, but dying Palestinians, you know, in the hands of Israelis is just is gonna fucking be civilian casualties as a part of the war. There is no proper way to resist against an apartheid. resist against colonial occupation. I just want you to understand there's no perfect way to do it. That's why on the optics side, although I draw lines on what I think is like permissible and what I think is ridiculous and also immoral and unproductive, there's a line I won't cross. And the line I won't cross is like saying, oh, well, from the river to the sea is genocidal. It's fucking ridiculous.
They did oust a more brutal regime, the Taliban. There was...
That wasn't even a war aim.
There
wasn't even a war aim. Wasn't even a war aim.
But is that a moral thing to do? They did get rid of a brutal regime. There was celebration in Canada. Now,
Good, fine. Let them bomb Israel and get rid of the brutal regime there.
how do you distinguish between that kind of what you describe as terrorism and what they are saying, Osama bin Laden, who's a terrorist? Make the distinction.
That's very simple. If they do it, it's terrorism. If we do it, it's counterterrorism. That's a historical universal. Go back to Nazi propaganda, see? Most extreme mass murderers ever. If you look at Nazi propaganda, it's exactly what they said.
Yep.
They said they are defending the populations and the legitimate governments of Europe.
People, I think, literally, what's that fucking famous take where they say, like, America's only learned about World War II, and even then, they don't know shit about World War II. Because the Nazi campaign against Jews did not happen overnight. It was a long approach of dehumanization that they engaged in while using one of the most antiquated forms of hatred. Anti-Semitism was already well established in Europe. It was already centuries old at that fucking point. Pogroms had occurred everywhere. Like, most people don't understand how that happened. Like, do you think the Germans didn't fucking put up a reasonable reason as to why they were combating the Jews amongst their ranks? Of course they did. It was bullshit. But from the logical confines that they cultivated for themselves, it made sense. This does not mean that it was right. This does not mean that it was moral. Of course it was immoral and unjustifiable, but it doesn't change the reality that they didn't just go, yeah, Jews are bad, and everyone was like, yeah, I agree, actually. Like, that's not, you're oversimplifying it. That's why it's really important to understand. It's really, really important to understand how the Holocaust happened, specifically so you don't fucking commit it again, okay? That's what Never Again is all about.
Let's now cross back to the United Nations and listen to what the Palestinian ambassador have to say, Riyad Mansour.
In order to stop this war, because it means more killing of children, more killing of civilians, more destruction, more failing of hospitals, more failing of being able to have the sustenance of human beings. And we will be with them, and we will do everything. We will continue knocking on the door of the Security Council. We need to go to the General Assembly if we need, and we will keep working with the Secretary General and the President of the General Assembly in order to stop this war against the 2.3 million Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. And we thank you as journalists in covering, our story, because some of the media, which is blinded with one narrative, is not fairly covering our story. Please cover it completely, cover it comprehensively, cover the massacres and the crimes committed against our people.
He's right. Because if you don't do that, and no one is fucking doing that, there are so many outlets that just refuse to do that, and that plays a role in shaping public consciousness in this ethnic cleansing campaign. He's right about that. There's a reason why it's devastating when a lot of the mainstream outlets immediately take whatever the IDF said, even though they have shown consistently that they're in the wrong, and have routinely provided information that gets quickly falsified. And then the people that engage in murderous acts are not even fucking punished months later down the line when they openly admit that they actually did engage in this murderous act. Cry about it, you say. Brother, I cry about it because I have a conscience. You don't cry about it because you're a fucking demon. It's fine. You will never be able to rest easy. When all is said and done, when you put your fucking head at that pillow, those dead Palestinians will haunt you. And if it doesn't, if you don't even fucking think about it, then you're a disgusting, monstrous piece of shit anyway. You're just a sociopathic piece of shit. Many of you are too young to remember the post 9/11 universe, okay, in America. You were either born after 9/11 or born during 9/11, you know what I mean? Like, you were too young to understand what the media looked like in that universe. I was pretty young too, but at least I had a decent understanding of what the fuck was going on. And the reality is, for me, as someone who had connections to the United States of America, who had traveled to the US as well as a Turkish person, watching all of this stuff unfold, watching the messaging, watching the media, watching the way that, I mean, a lot of people were captivated by the likes of Jon Stewart, for example, for a particular reason. That reason was that Jon Stewart was the only voice of reason in mainstream media at the time that was like very critical of the war in Iraq and the war in Afghanistan as well. So a lot of that stuff happened not directly after 9/11. It happened in the subsequent 10 to 15 years after 9/11. So a lot of you probably didn't recognize that at the time because you were too young. You're watching that happen right now. You're watching that happen right now. You're seeing how the media covers every step. You're seeing how the media operates in lockstep with the State Department. You're seeing how they try to reframe things that are happening right in front of your fucking eyes. The similarities are gigantic. This is why at every fucking 9/11, I always love going through the cultural mania that was instilled upon the American public and in the West in general, in an effort to justify the bombing campaigns that would start. And it is bar for bar the same shit that's occurring right now. They're whitewashing the atrocities. They're turning a blind eye to it in many instances, or at the very least defending it. And also on top of that, anyone that speaks out against this, horrific ethnic cleansing campaign is cast aside and bullied down. And instead of saying like, oh, you're pro Saddam, because that's what they used to say, when people would say this is ridiculous, going into Iraq is a ridiculous move, they would say, oh, you're pro Saddam, you love terrorism, fucking piece of shit, fuck you. You love terrorism, you're against American freedom, we have to kill these people. We have to kill these people. Oh, you must be pro Osama bin Laden. And now it's the same shit. It's like, oh, you think it's fucked up to do ethnic cleansing in Gaza? You think it's fucked up that Israel maintains an apartheid state in incredibly violent means? Well, you must be anti-Semitic and love Hamas. They say that, and then they take it one step further where they like write think pieces about how do we deal with the anti-Semitism on the left? How will we purge these socialists from these anti-Semitic, Hamas-loving socialists from the Democratic Party? How do we do that? Like the think piece economy is thriving right now. Are they talking about what's going on? Are they talking about ethnic cleansing? No. Or even if they do, what do they do? Even if they talk about ethnic cleansing, they literally will take the ethnic cleansing conversation, cast it aside, and place the same amount of emphasis, if not more, on what's going on our college campuses. That is fucking crazy. Can you imagine? 3,000 children have been ruthlessly slaughtered. And we don't even know what the latest count is because Israel also shut down all telecommunications in Gaza as it's conducting a ridiculous bombing campaign still. And it is wild. It is wild that while that is happening, the way that people are talking about the situation, oh, well, I don't know, there was anti-Semitism happening in one of these pro-Palestinian protests. Yeah, that does happen. Yeah, of course, anti-Semitism is a permanent fixture in the Western world, okay? That's how the Holocaust happened. It is completely unacceptable. But anti-Semitism has no basis in this conversation. Anti-Semitism is a mere distraction in this conversation. I'll say it like that. Anti-Semitism is not how you engage in anti-Zionism. It's fucking ridiculous. And no matter how much people try to tamper and clamp down on voices that are callous, voices that are immoral, that look to the situation on hand and not just recognize the inhumanity of the apartheid, but are blinded by that inhumanity and think all matter of retaliation is perfectly just, and they will fucking celebrate it, not realizing that most people will use their celebrations against the Palestinian emancipation cause in the Western world. There's two different things. I will never sit here and tell a Palestinian optics sweaty. I won't do that because they're the ones who are suffering. But if you're an American and you're fucking running around thinking that you can be as bloodthirsty as Israeli Zionism supporters can be when they talk about Palestinians, let me tell you, you can't do that. You can't be as callous. So I do make that distinction. But I also do understand that it's fucking ridiculous to hyper focus on hyper focus on like the fucking silly ass takes coming from the left and make it seem like this is the major thing. This is what's motivating people. It's like it's anti-Semitism that's motivating people on the left to understand the dignity of Palestinian lives. Like that's what it is. Anti-Semitism is not, it has nothing to do with anti-Zionism. In many instances, the greatest anti-Semites are also pro-Zionist, whether it be literal fucking Nazis or literal neo-Nazis and fascists in European countries right now that support the statehood project of Israel because, one, they believe that Israel's enemies are, you know, a grave threat to their own society, Muslims. You know, they hate the hordes of Muslims coming in, or they love a place where Jews can just go so they're not their neighbors. It's just, I don't know. Anti-Semitism is so fucking gross. I will never allow it to take root in this community. I will never allow it to fucking take root anywhere. I will always fucking fight against it. But it hurts my fucking soul when I hear from so many people that look to the ongoing situation and cast the entirety of the left and the entirety of the Palestinian liberation movement with the anti-Semitic brush. And for some, maybe they've been misled. Maybe they've actually seen, you know, definitely seen anti-Semitic rhetoric, and that really fucking turned, that really dialed up a notch, and they personally were terrified of that, okay? I'm not discounting that. But there are certainly others who are utilizing this as an opportunity to just cast a shadow on the entirety of the Palestinian emancipation movement. It is being weaponized, and it is really fucking gross. Because ultimately, the major point of contention here isn't that like Hamas is gonna come and kill Amy Schumer in her fucking gated neighborhood in like the Hidden Hills or wherever the fuck she lives. You know what I mean? Like the real point of contention does not surround Hamas operatives fucking sneaking across the San Diego border. The real issue here is what is happening right in front of our eyes. I'll tell you this much. I think anti-Semitism is gross. It's disgusting, right? I don't think we should turn a blind eye to it. But one of the major reasons as to why I fucking attack anti-Semitism is because anti-Semitism is one of the greatest ways to figure out that someone is a fascist. And that ideology is inherently violent, is inherently devastating. And more importantly than it being immoral, it also has taken root in places of power. It is so crazy to me in particular that all of these fucking monsters, like those in the Tory party in the UK, who say gross anti-Semitic shit all the fucking time, turn around and be like, the left is the anti-Semitic ones. Guys, watch out, look out for the left. The greatest example of this I've used in the past, the greatest example I pointed to was when Jeremy Corbyn was the leader of the Labour Party. The media was calling him an anti-Semite, like, in an insane way. I never strayed away from my message. I always fucking pushed back against that. I always said it's absolutely disgusting that people said Jeremy Corbyn is an anti-Semite. It's completely and utterly ridiculous to say such a thing. Rest in power. David Graeber also defended Corbyn as well, and many others did, but it didn't matter because like all of these prominent Jews who were defending Corbyn and saying that he's not an anti-Semite at all were completely silenced by the media. You never heard about them. You only heard like Zionists who wanted to defend Zionists of all backgrounds, Christian Zionists, Jewish Zionists, that completely fucking jumped on the Corbyn is an anti-Semite campaign, okay? While they were doing that, one of the most insane things that happened while they were doing that was when the Tory party actually put forward a statue. They put up a statue of the first female MP while they were literally screaming from the fucking rooftops about how Corbyn was a fucking anti-Semite. They literally turned around and put up a statue to Nancy Astor. For those of you who don't know, Nancy Witcher Langford Astor Viscountess was a former member of the Parliament of the United Kingdom, the First Lady of British politics. She was also a rabid anti-Semite. She was literally a rabid anti-Semite. Said things such as, you know, Hitler or the Nazis had good ideas about Jews, like things of that nature. So was there any coverage on that? Did anybody go, wow, the anti-Semitism coming from the Tory party is fucking unimaginable? Did they say that at the time? Of course they didn't say that at the time. Because while anti-Semitism is real, a very real problem, because ultimately it's the one neat little bow to tie every anti-materialist school of thought with. You have to find the enemy, you have to find a villain, and historically it's always Jews. That's why all conspiracy theories, even to this day, almost always revolve around, oh, Jews are doing it. They must be doing it. They control the media, they control politics, they control this, they control that. Historically, that's just how it's been. I guess maybe it goes back to the original sin, I don't know, killing Jesus, whatever these fucking psycho Christians think. But my point is, this has historically been at the heart of every fucking form of bigotry. Anti-Semitism is like the original bigotry. It's the most compelling bigotry that exists, and it has always been a rallying cry of the worst fucking fascists we've ever seen. So it is infinitely scarier, in my fucking opinion, that people can so callously deploy a very real fear while simultaneously being fascists them fucking selves. It's crazy to me to see Islamophobic, anti-black, anti-Semitic fucking conservative freaks turn around and tell Jews that they are fake Jews or anti-Semitic themselves for criticizing Israel. This is incredibly alarming.
Didn't cover it in yesterday's show, and I
Seafood is an interesting cuisine because restaurants that serve seafood generally tend to be on the fancier, more expensive, upscale side. And meanwhile, the actual act of eating seafood, or at least certain types of it, is basically the most primal way you can possibly eat. Shellfish pretty much requires you to tear creatures that are essentially giant underwater insects, limb from limb.
I hate thinking about them like that, but you're right.
That's what they are.
Yeah.
Or in the case of oysters, just swallow them whole.
Yeah, I do like oysters as well. Please don't ruin them. Also, I don't know why, but you starting the show with seafood was just absurd for me for some reason.
It's a seafood story.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's understandable that some people aren't too into it, and for some, even the smell of seafood is a deal breaker. But even for people who love seafood, there are limits. For example, even if you love pounding back oysters, which I do, the idea of eating 4 dozen raw oysters on the half shell in one sitting probably sounds a bit nauseating. Nevertheless, recently, through the magic of TikTok, the world found out that this is not always the case.
Yeah.
Some people, that is a line that they will cross.
I'm now convinced that you didn't have COVID and you actually just kicked back 50 to 60 oysters while you were in New Orleans. And you got sick from eating too much raw seafood.
I actually did not have a single oyster.
Oh, okay. Well,
I did
my
have.
theory goes out the window.
I did have a lot of seafood, but no oysters. Now you mention it. I did put a lot of terrible things in my body, though.
Yeah, a couple of hurricanes.
Yeah.
Couple of grenades, the hand grenades.
Hush puppies, some beignets. Yeah.
The Cafe Du Monde saw you coming a mile away. They said, this guy's wearing a black shirt and it's about to be covered in white powder.
We got another whale.
Yeah.
Anyway, here's back to the oysters. Here's Rolling Stone.
A woman who slurped down 4 dozen oysters at an Atlanta seafood restaurant and recorded the whole meal for TikTok has sparked new debates about dating etiquette. But the eatery's general manager says it was just business as usual. In the video, which has circulated widely on X, formerly Twitter, and appeared on the massively popular Instagram account The Shade Room, TikTok user @Equana documents her visit to Fontaine's Oyster House, which she claims serves the best fucking oysters in Atlanta. She explains that she's meeting a man who had been trying to take her out for some time, and once seated, proceeds to order the Tuesday special. A dozen oysters for $15. That is a deal.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Then she gets another round, and another, and another. The whole time, we're treated to close-up shots of Iguana dressing the oysters with lemon juice and Tabasco sauce, then knocking them back. At some point, her companion decides he'd had enough and flees the scene, leaving her to pay the check.
I mean, she was kind of asking for it. Like, in the video, she's just like, this motherfucker keeps messaging me, and like, I'm not interested in him at all, so I'm gonna take him up on this date.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna order 48 oysters.
Yeah.
And then, oh, he doesn't want to pay for those oysters, and he's the bad guy?
This isn't even a record, though. I think the record's like 100 or 200 or something like that. But those are professional eaters, okay? We're talking about Joey Chestnut level of oyster eaters.
I mean, it's less gross than eating that many hot dogs, I'd say.
Yeah. Look, I'm
At least
sure
it's.
I like oysters, but I'm sure a lot of people out there.
I like oysters too. I think the most I've ever had in one sitting was maybe like
I think it's
6.
I've probably had a dozen.
I mean, there's been times where I probably wanted to eat a dozen and I stopped myself because
Well,
they're expensive. At
they
least
are.
here in LA, they're fucking expensive.
Well, we've been to the place in Boston with the oyster bar. It's very nice.
Yeah, that was
But, there's a vast variety of sizes too, because you'll get some that are like little baby things,
Yeah.
very good, and then you'll get ones that even I find are gross, where like
Yeah,
the
the big
shell is like.
The big ones, you gotta cook those. They're actually pretty good if you cook them and then you
Oh, our
spread them.
friend Jesse made some.
You spread them on toast, yeah. Yeah, there's a Mexican seafood, a Marisco's place near me that sells pretty cheap oysters, and they are gigantic and just not good. I made that mistake once. I was like, I think I ordered like 3 oysters. I ate like 1.5. It's like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
But anyway, the actual TikTok is fucking wild. As an oyster lover myself, when the first dozen come out and she starts wolfing them down, I'll admit, my mouth started watering. I was like, hell yeah.
I can taste the ocean right in my own living room.
Eat those oysters.
Yeah.
That looks pretty damn good. And a dozen oysters for $15, that's a hell of a deal.
It is.
They're like $6 a piece here in LA.
You can find deals here too. I'll let you know after.
You can find them, but it's like with raw seafood, you know, there is a
You really want to cut corners.
there is a balance between like, you know, cost and quality. But yeah, then after that first plate, she just starts stacking those trays, and by the end, she has eaten 48 fucking oysters, and my appetite that I had at the start of the clip kind of gone.
Yeah.
I am a bit disgusted. I no longer crave those oysters.
Did she at least get a T-shirt or something for from the restaurant?
No, because as we will find out, this is actually not as unusual as you might
We
think.
had to stop making the T-shirts. We were going out of business.
But I admit, I am simply in awe of this very petty, very hungry woman. As for how people reacted to this spectacle, here's the article again. The clip has prompted an almost giddy disbelief across social media, with viewers commenting on the amount of food, the choice to document the shellfish feast, and whether @Iquana left an appropriate tip. I'm sorry, but 48 oysters as an appetizer got me screaming, reads one of the top comments on the TikTok. Parentheses. The oysters were followed by a potato dish and crab cakes.
Oh my! My word!
An ex-user wrote rap lyrics describing the incident. Took her to the seafood spot, shit was straight, then she started murdering oysters, first 48.
Yeah. A good reference to the show.
And while some observers said that they too would abandon a date over this order, one person joked, can't have 4 drinks, can't have 48 oysters, what can a lady have around here?
Then we reach the point in the article where writer Miles Klee does some real journalism and investigates exactly how unusual one person housing 4 dozen oysters actually is. While there was no shortage of opinions on the prospect of demolishing 4 full platters of oysters in front of a person who isn't eating at all.
That's the wildest part, is the guy didn't order
just
any.
sitting there looking at.
He invited her out for drinks.
Yeah. I just a person staring blankly at someone else devouring.
Oh, you're getting
oysters.
another plate, huh?
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Yeah. A story for a lifetime.
Yeah.
A real gift, honestly.
At $15 a dozen, not
Who
even
cares
that
anymore?
expensive.
Yeah. Fontaine's general manager, Kelsey Flanagan, who was working that night, tells Rolling Stone it's almost typical for Atlanta. This is nothing new for us, she says. It was just quite funny, Flanagan says. Iquana's gauntlet of seafood didn't exactly break any records for Fontaine's. Quote, I've had 2 ladies order 6 dozen oysters each, she says.
My God.
That's not even the cherry on top. They were drinking White Russian.
Oh.
I didn't know how to personally feel about that.
Ugh.
I was just like, this is insane to me, but okay. She's also seen competitive eaters come in on special nights. Like, I had this one guy that was in an oyster eating competition order 15 dozen, she says. Some people are just built different. And yeah,
That's so many oysters.
it's one thing to be like, there's salt water and these blobs of, you know, whatever floating around in someone's stomach, but then dumping White Russians on top of it.
Yeah, that's just too much. That is
Can I have
foul.
Some dairy with my oysters, please.
Yeah.
Dairy and alcohol.
I can't even like explain to you why oysters are good. I feel like they might objectively be bad, but I just like them for some reason.
Yeah, it's like a little shot of salt water and goodness.
Yeah, it's like if you've ever been hit in the face by like a wave in the ocean, it's very unpleasant. But there is like 1% of it that's just like,
well, salt's one of the best ingredients.
Kind of like, and it captures that 1% that's actually feels kind of good.
Yeah, and I like to take them straight. I don't use the condiments. I don't use the lemon or Tabasco.
I mean, they are good straight, but generally, if you go to a place, especially in LA, like the chef has like their own little. It's not just fucking tartar sauce. Yeah. It's they got
you know,
they got their own little
sometimes
thing.
they have like a little like a vinegar or like kind of a
like a garlic thing.
Yes.
Yeah, those are really
that's
good.
been like fermented or something.
Yes.
It's well, I'm getting hungry just talking.
I'm gonna go get a dozen oysters myself after this.
We should go get 48 oysters each.
Stack them. Bring another dozen.
These guys have beat me out of house and home.
Anyway, so yeah, it turns out that these people, they walk in our midst undetected. There are oyster devourers.
Sloshing around.
Yeah. They're, turn to your left and turn to your right. One of those people just ate several dozen oysters.
Yeah.
The next time you're out for seafood, there may be another patron in that very restaurant eating several dozen oysters, all to themselves, unbeknownst to anyone but the wait staff.
Yeah.
They're keeping their secret.
Until the applause starts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Must be their birthday or something.
Yeah.
Nope, just a Tuesday.
Must be one of those food challenges.
Nope, just an average Wednesday afternoon.
48 oysters.
That's a lot.
I have heard a little life hack is if you go down to like Grand Central Market at like 6 o'clock in the morning, you can get them wholesale for about $1 each.
Okay. There's a spot near both of us that does happy hour $1 oysters, but
I've seen that. Yeah, I haven't been to that place yet.
Probably like this. It's to get you through the door to drink. Which works for me because the spell doesn't work on me. I don't drink.
Haha.
So I'll just have the oysters, please.
Yeah, more oysters for you.
Haha.
Anyway, speaking of oysters, they are often on the menu for Sunday brunch, a fourth meal that is especially popular among people in their 20s because it is an excuse to get drunk as fuck at 11 a.m. over a plate of Eggs Benedict. And here's some news about brunch that, like the oyster story, is something you're really only aware of on a wide scale if you work in the service industry as a restaurant server. Otherwise, you're oblivious to it. But it's fucking gross. Here's the San Francisco Gate.
There's a reason we revere brunch. We look forward to unpacking the work week with friends over decadent egg dishes, syrup-laden pancakes, and the requisite mimosa. We give ourselves permission to indulge in extra bacon and maybe even a second champagne cocktail as we reconnect and relax. But nowhere in this happy place do you picture vomit. Yet dealing with patrons who lose their brunch is a reality for Bay Area restaurants offering the popular perk of bottomless mimosa. Particularly since the pandemic, they're finding that diners, often ones in their early to mid-20s, are drinking too much and vomiting in the bathrooms, or even right on their table. The burden on servers and staff to clean up after these public pukers is reaching a fever pitch, making it necessary for restaurants to take precautions and even implement fees. And if you see a gaggle of white women coming your way,
oh my God,
watch out!
Yeah, put on your raincoat.
Yeah, they're gonna be vomiting all over the place. Yeah. Citric acid, enough is.
And I've never been a fan of the bottomless mimosa specifically because it is you can't drink that much fucking orange juice.
No.
Even if there was no champagne in it, it's too much orange juice.
First of all, they're using too much orange juice to offset the actual
they
liquor
water that shit down too.
Secondly, the orange juice that 99% of the restaurants is using is literally like 100% sugar.
Yeah.
It's what it might as well be Sunny D. Which ironically makes alcoholic seltzer now as well. They do. Arizona iced tea.
The seltzer thing, we need to.
Mr. Biden, press the button.
Yeah, shut it down. Yeah. Shut it down.
Yeah. But it's just people just housing citric acid and sugar.
Yeah.
And like just a little bit of alcohol and being like, it's bottomless, let's get wild.
Woo! Anyway, the article then features a photo of a sign in the Oakland restaurant Kitchen Stories bathroom, which reads, "Dear all mimosa lovers, please drink responsibly and know your limits. A $50 cleaning fee will automatically include in your tab when you throw up in the public areas. Thank you so much for your understanding." Smiley face. And what's interesting is that Kitchen Story and other restaurants featured in the article say that this phenomenon really started during the pandemic once restaurants reopened for business, which is perfectly in line with all of our other observations, all the other evidence about how just a few months of semi-isolation in 2020 turned everyone in this country completely fucking feral.
It is. It's crazy to see in all aspects of the public square people not being able to control themselves.
Yeah.
Or
It was a societal reset.
yeah, it's crazy.
Anyway, here's more about a different restaurant facing the same problem.
Home Plate on Lombard Street caters to the brunch-obsessed marina crowd with cheesy bacon tots and chunky corned beef hash. It offers a liter carafe of raspberry, peach, or other flavored bubbly, roughly 4 to 5 pours, depending on the size of the flute, that is poured by a server as part of the service. Owner Tarut Boone and his staff have witnessed their share of Ralphers over the years. In late 2021, when vomiting seemed to become an issue, Boone instituted pretty much the same policy as Kitchen Story, he said. Signs posted around the restaurant and on the menu asked diners to please drink responsibly. $50 cleaning fee per person for any incident incurred as a result of intoxication.
It continues. After customers complained, the signs came down in July, but the policy remains at the bottom of the drink menu. And it has helped, Boone told SF Gate. When Home Plate started serving bottomless mimosas back in 2010, they gave diners 2 hours to enjoy their champagne cocktails and breakfast dishes. They eventually reduced it to 90 minutes, and over the summer took it down to 75 minutes. We had a problem with intoxication, and also we needed to turn tables to serve more customers, he said. It's better, but every other week we get somebody throwing up or vomiting. Now they go outside.
Yeah, this is wild, because when you think about it too, it's just like, they're not just getting bottomless mimosas. They're getting, in a lot of cases, brunch, breakfast, whatever, especially out at a restaurant, one of the unhealthiest meals.
Yeah.
The saltiest, like, sugar-filled meals you can get on top of mimosas.
Yeah, half that breakfast menu is food that in any other context would be considered dessert.
Yeah, let me get the bottomless mimosas, and like one person's gonna get a stack of pancakes, and then the other person's gonna get like corned beef hash.
Yeah.
Hash browns.
Either your sugar levels or your sodium levels are like going through the fucking roof.
Yeah, but this works out perfectly because if done on a Sunday, both people within the relationship can just ignore it, because the women, they go to their brunch and they sleep the rest of the day. The men, they go watch the football. Sorry to assign the gender roles. Just in my experience, they cross over and everyone has a great Sunday, I guess.
Yeah, I guess you got a point there. But yeah, these white women, where anywhere like 3 or more of them are gathered, you want to steer clear.
Especially if they're wearing a sash.
Oh my God.
If it's a bachelorette party or a birthday.
And that's true here, but that is especially true anywhere in Europe, because 9 out of 10 times, what's that accent? Oh, they're British.
They're British.
Oh God. Oh God.
Here comes well, on the other side of things.
They're having a hen do.
Yeah, the other side is the stag do, where yeah. While they're drinking multiple pints.
Yeah, the British are fucking.
Here's to feeling good all the time.
The British are a scourge upon humanity. Everything bad about Americans came from them.
Yeah.
And they still do it worse, except for the guns.
Yeah.
They did solve that.
And what remains of their public health care system.
Yeah, that's right. They're fixing that. Anyway, speaking of COVID-19 and things that make you puke, the bogus health product Miracle Mineral Solution is something we've talked about in the past on the show, because it's really the pinnacle of the alternative medicine movement that gained popularity during COVID, with people who loudly and proudly proclaim their distrust in medical science while ingesting whatever weird shit random cranks online tell them to, with sometimes disastrous results. Miracle Mineral Solution, or MMS, has been around since 2006 and has been touted as a cure for everything from HIV to malaria to cancer to autism and everything in between. And it, of course, later caught on with the QAnon and Q-adjacent crowd as a cure for COVID-19. The only problem? This shit is literally bleach.
Yeah, we've talked about this.
It's just bleach.
Even before COVID, this stuff was going around for like miracle cures for
people
things.
Drink it and then they shit out like
Their stomach
literally
lining.
their stomach and intestinal lining. They're like, wow, look at all those parasites that were in me.
The toxins have been flushed.
It's bad enough. These people give it to their kids, which is like
horrific,
bad. But yeah, it's specifically it's chlorine dioxide, which is an industrial bleach, and as you might guess, not good for you. Definitely not a cure for anything except being alive.
Yeah.
Anyway, here's the New York Times with some news about that.
A Florida man and 3 sons who use a business masquerading as a church to sell more than $1 million of a deadly bleach solution that they claimed was a miracle cure for COVID-19 and other diseases were each sentenced on Friday to several years in prison, federal prosecutors in Miami said. Mark Grennan, 66, of Bradenton, Florida.
Yep, these are your neighbors.
And one of his sons, Joseph Grennan, 36, were sentenced to 5 years in prison for conspiring to defraud the government, while the 2 other sons, Jonathan Grennan, 37, and Jordan Grennan, 29, were sentenced to 12 years and 7 months in prison for defrauding the government and contempt of court, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Florida said in a news release. The Grennans poisoned thousands of people with their bogus miracle cure, which was nothing more than industrial bleach. Michael Homer, an assistant U.S. attorney who prosecuted the case, said in a statement, they targeted vulnerable people who were suffering from life-threatening illnesses and who were desperate for a cure. Prosecutors said that the Food and Drug Administration had received reports of people requiring hospitalizations, developing life-threatening conditions, and dying after drinking the product.
And this is also an indictment of our healthcare system,
Yes.
where a lot of people just literally cannot afford to treat their conditions the right way and go looking for alternatives. And grifters like these fucking assholes, they make millions of dollars off that shit.
I'm convinced that a lot of this has to do with people's apprehension or straight up fear of doctors and bad news. Because the people selling you the miracle cure aren't going to tell you exactly what's wrong with you. They're just going to tell you that they can fix it.
This will fix it for you.
Yeah, there's a lot of medical fear out there, and it's a lot of miseducation, and the fact that they can't get medical care when they actually do need it, or they're not taking care of themselves in a way that would have prevented a disease like that, because with our healthcare system, it actually works against you to be on top of your healthcare needs, because it's very expensive.
Yeah. Anyway, what's especially crazy about these guys is that despite being repeatedly told by the FDA to stop marketing and selling this shit, which is literal bleach, they assumed that by making a fake church called the Genesis 2 Church of Healing, whose only purpose is selling MMS, they'd be totally fine legally. No, officer, you don't understand.
Here's my church
It's a
card.
church. From the article, prosecutors believe the Grennans created the church entity as a way to skirt government regulations. The church's website described itself as non-religious church, and Mark Grennan had said he founded the church to legalize the use of the dangerous treatment, prosecutors said. That's why a priest can give a kid wine in church publicly and not get arrested, because it's a sacrament, Mark Grennan said in a February 2020 interview with an online news program, according to an affidavit filed in the case, adding, "You can't arrest us from doing one of our sacraments."
This kid is drinking as much wine as a white girl during brunch. Please, that's too much blood of Christ.
Interesting legal strategy. Rock solid.
And I love that his idea is just like that kids are drinking either entire glasses or bottles of wine and not just like a sip as a traditional thing.
Yeah.
And in most cases, I assume these days, at least when I was a kid and went to the church like the 1 or 2 times, it's like grape juice or something.
I mean, in the Catholic Church, it's still wine, but it's literally like 50-50, like Carlo Rossi and water, and it's like half an ounce. Like, no one's gonna get fucking drunk off this shit.
Yeah.
Anyway, it continues. In a memorandum in support of pretrial detention, prosecutors said the family in 2020 had threatened to pick up guns and instigate a Waco, alluding to the deadly 1993 siege in Texas by federal authorities of a religious sect's compound in response to a judge's order that year to stop selling the solution.
My God-given right to sell bleach to humans for consumption. From my cold, dead hands.
I mean...
Yeah, well, enjoy prison, dipshits. And speaking of conspiracy nut jobs, it's time for yet another update on someone who's been a recurring main character for a while at this point, and somehow hasn't gotten herself put behind bars yet. That's right, come on down. It's the QAnon Queen of Canada, Romana Didulo. She's back at it again with more bullshit, and she's really testing the limits this time around.
Yeah, it's getting a little scary. The bleach people were talking about Waco, and Romana's kind of heading in a bit of a Waco direction.
Well, here's Vice. Canadian police have set up a mobile temporary detachment in the small town where the so-called QAnon Queen of Canada and her followers have taken over a school. QAnon takes over your school! Sign up now for the cool sweepstakes from Nickelodeon. For almost a month now, Romana Didulo, a QAnon influencer who has convinced her followers that she's the true Queen of Canada, who is waging a secretive war against a cabal of pedophile elites, among a myriad of other esoteric beliefs, has been living in an abandoned school in the tiny Saskatchewan town of Richmond. Along with Didulo is a core group of about 10 or so followers who have given up their lives to travel with her and listen to every demand. I would assume that they have no choice because they don't have homes anymore because they stopped paying their mortgages and bills.
I mean, it is a brilliant strategy she took of like just actively ruining these people's lives.
So that she's their only hope.
Driving them deeply into debt, making them lose everything.
They have literally nowhere else to go,
Yeah.
so you might as well fully commit to the QAnon Queen of Canada.
Fucking dark. So yeah, great. More Waco vibes. The owner of the school is apparently a member of the Queen's cult, so there's not a whole lot that can be done.
I'm a member of the Queen's cult.
But this quiet town of just 250 people, they really ain't having it. And based on everything we've learned about these people over the last year and a half, you really can't blame them. Do not let them anywhere near your personal RV.
No, they will take it and they will keep it.
Anyways, the story continues. The group is planning on hosting a meet and greet on October 14th, where they will hold a bizarre ritual where followers declare themselves sovereign in order to receive a fat stack of Didulo's fake currency. Romana dollars. The group has held similar events across the country. The group has been bringing in chain link fencing, portable toilets, and other materials to aid with the event. The idea of their town being inundated, more than it already has, with people who believe a small woman living in an RV is a divine being, has understandably put some town folks on edge. Many of the town's worries arise from a cease and desist order sent by Didulo's followers that threatened the recipients with publicly broadcast executions if they don't stop their Rothschild/CCP-based communistic, unfair, demoralizing, and immoral activities. The letters were sent not by Didulo, but by her followers, who have made a habit of sending similar notes to people who have angered them.
Wow. Meanwhile, the cult itself is also ramping up the paranoia in a way that seems like it might not end well. Apparently, some horrible people are claiming to spread rat poison around the area where Princess and Comet, the royal puppies of Queen Romana Didulo, go do their business. Andi said in the live stream in reference to Didulo's 2 dogs, "There is a possible threat to Her Royal Majesty Queen Romana Didulo, her team, the volunteers, and the royal puppies. That the building we are currently working from may be set on fire," she added, referring to a Facebook post that joked about burning down the school to get rid of Didulo and her group. The group has asked for followers to come and stay with them to volunteer as security and announced that Canada is at DEFCON 1 threat level.
I hope nothing bad happens to the royal puppies.
They were innocent in all this. They had no choice.
They had no choice.
No.
So yeah, things are really ramping up with this. Once again, very, very glad that getting a gun up there is not as easy as it is down here.
Didulo had a weird diet too, didn't she? Speaking of weird diets,
sardines. She loves sardines. I've never had a sardine.
I've had people, apparently there's a growing movement of people who enjoy canned fish. I've only ever had like canned salmon.
Yeah.
It's fine.
I mean, like tuna salad.
I guess. Sardines, I'm a child of the 80s. I am a product...
Sardines and anchovies?
Yes.
No thanks.
Yeah, I am a product of the entertainment industry telling me that was gross and I shouldn't have it.
I have had anchovy on pizza. It's pretty popular in like Europe. And it was just extremely salty. I didn't like it just because it was so fucking salty.
Yeah.
The flavor is very strong.
Mm-hmm. But the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles would never.
They would never.
No anchovies.
Anyway, moving on to an update about another recurring character, a guy that we kind of assumed was dead at this point.
Yeah, I mean, all signs pointed to that for the past couple of months.
Lord Miles, real name Miles Rutledge, the shitposting 24-year-old YouTuber who first gained fame after visiting Afghanistan as a tourist, right as the U.S. was withdrawing its troop presence and allowing the Taliban to take control of the country. A great time to visit. Lord Miles was able to get out of Afghanistan, just barely, and reactions to his stunt ranged from admiration for his bravery to denunciations of his needlessly dangerous behavior, putting a strain on already difficult evacuation efforts. What do you do? Yeah. Anyways, for whatever reason, the only lesson that Lord Miles took from the ordeal was that going to Afghanistan is a great way to go viral online. It's content. So he went back, and his second trip didn't go quite so well. He got arrested and hasn't been heard from in a while. Here's Vice.
The Taliban released 4 British nationals from captivity in Afghanistan, including edgelord shitposter Lord Miles Rutledge. Rutledge is infamous as a self-proclaimed war tourist who first gained notoriety when he barely escaped Afghanistan during the U.S. withdrawal in 2021. The BBC broke the story of Rutledge's release on October 10th, and the UK's Home Office confirmed it. Rutledge was released alongside 2 unnamed British citizens and UN aid worker Kevin Cornwell, a 54-year-old man with health problems. Mr. Cornwell and the 3 other British nationals, which includes Miles Rutledge, have been released and have left Afghanistan. Scott Richards, the co-founder of the Presidium Network, a nonprofit that supported some of the captured people, said on Twitter. They are coming home. Thank you to everyone for their support of these men during this difficult period. We are all relieved.
So yeah, on his second trip in January of this year, Lord Miles was very quickly arrested by the Taliban and remained arrested for 10 months until this week. And as we previously discussed, at least one of the 3 other British nationals being held by the Taliban was there doing like aid work. Was there for a very good reason. So it had to be extremely annoying for that guy to be locked up with some dipshit kid who came to Afghanistan purely for online clout.
I can't even imagine the conversations. Just
You did what?
Yeah.
And that aid worker also was dealing with serious health issues, and his time in Taliban custody was surely prolonged by Lord Miles providing himself as another hostage for the Taliban to use as a bargaining chip. Anyway, a big reason a lot of people assumed Lord Miles was dead at this point was that his official Twitter account has been posting outlandish claims about his time in Afghanistan that were very hard to believe. Here's Vice on that.
After Lord Miles went into an Afghan prison, speculation about his condition spread on the internet. His Twitter account, @RealLordMiles, fueled the speculation with increasingly bizarre claims about Rutledge's life behind bars, including that he lives in luxury. The account claimed that the Taliban loved Miles, thought he was goofy, and enjoyed his book. The Taliban are happy with international business in their country, so Miles has had regular picnics and dinners with higher-ups discussing business plans and the gold mine. As he got arrested with $1,300 in his pocket, he basically lives in luxury, the account said on September 27th. Ordering takeaway, can buy movies at the market to put on his laptop, has all his business docs, has got the new TF2 update, and is pulling off some stunts. At first, like all of you, I was worried he was struggling in some bad place, but then he described how the Taliban liked the Titanic movie and Rambo 3. If he wants eggs, his servants buy him eggs, the account continued. If he doesn't like a dish, he gets pizza. When we called him, he said, "Lovely holiday." The account said Miles planned to write another book and open a gold mine in Afghanistan.
Okay, see, this is obviously likely an exaggeration at the very least, but it also wouldn't be surprising if it's at least partially true that they treated him well as a prisoner. The whole reason he was being held captive was as a diplomatic bargaining chip for the UK. It makes sense that they wouldn't want to damage the goods. The point is, he could have very easily avoided being a diplomatic bargaining chip for an extremist government if he had simply listened to every travel advisory in existence and not traveled there as a fucking tourist. And honestly, the Brits, they should honestly take this dude's passport away at this point, because you know he learned absolutely nothing, and you know that he's already planning his next trip, and they couldn't have picked a worse fucking time to let this war tourist out of his cell in Afghanistan and set him free.
My theory, which is completely wrong and totally inaccurate, just to put that out there, but my theory is that he was so annoying, such a